Ready, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. It's kid load.
Yep.
Too.
6 o'clock. We're not, we don't video. We're not on our still All right, folks. 6 o'clock. We will call this meeting to order. The 911 board. We do a roll usually, okay? So let's do it.
City of Bussey. City of Knoxville.
Yes.
Marion County Sheriff.
Here.
Knoxville Township.
Yes.
City of Pleasantville.
Here.
Washington Township. Clay Township. EMA Commission.
Yeah.
City of Milter Dallas.
Yes.
Lake Prairie Township.
Yes.
Indiana Township.
Yes.
Pella Police Department.
Here.
City of Harvey.
Yep.
Sorry. Marion County.
Yes.
City of Pella.
Yes.
Pleasant Grove.
Yes.
Red Rock Township.
All right, we have a quorum. Very good. Second item is to approve the agenda for today's regular session.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Second.
Who's the first?
All right, toss up, but we do have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. These were all emailed out. Emily? Okay. So everything emailed out. Any motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second or any discussion on the minutes? We have a second? We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is approved. All right, first real business item is a 911 GIS discussion. If you'll recall, in our last meeting, we had a discussion on GIS, different people here from Marion County IT. Sheriff spoke a little bit. We asked Jeff and Emily to get with those groups that were working on this and come back to the board with, are there issues? Are there things we need to fix and address? Are we good? Are there contractual matters that we need to be aware of? And all those types of things. So Jeff, do you have a report that you can provide the board with?
Yep, we'll start with a little bit of definitions and who's who. Geocom, obviously, is a leading provider of public safety GIS systems based in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Iowa Homeland Security Emergency Management Department and Geocom have a contractual relationship where the state hired Geocom to compile Next Gen 911 GIS data from all 99 counties for the state's database, okay, for the statewide GIS database, okay. This board, you and Geocom have had a contractual relationship for various items going back to at least 2008, as far as I could see. Maybe very likely was even further than that. Current contract covers GIS, MSAG, and alley maintenance for $1,010. This is an annual cost. GIS wireline layers, so they are doing the GIS wire, the landline maintenance, $3,412. And then we have 2 licenses. The GIS Data Manager software, 2 licenses. Those are the addressing tools that Missy uses to assign new addresses. And then the MSAG Manager software, that one's $550. The previous one was $3,080. So we do have a current contract with them. I believe it's the next agenda item. That contract is up for renewal, so we'll have more on that. Zetron is a communications company that was, when the state of Iowa opted to build the Iowa Shared Services Network, Zetron was the chosen vendor. They're based out of Virginia. Okay. GeoConnects, GeoCom, GeoConnects, separate companies. GeoConnects is very similar to Geocom, but we'll get more into what their involvement is here just shortly. They're based in Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay. Originally, my goal was to put this all in one flow chart to show you all of these relationships, but it got to a point after I built it, I couldn't even articulate it myself. So there was no way that I was going to be able to articulate it where you would understand it. So I broke it down. This is referring to the mapping, which is where the questions came up. So this is referring to 911 mapping, where the questions and the concerns came up. This is just a hierarchy or an illustration of the relationship. So you have the state of Iowa offering the shared services contract to Zetron. Zetron has to provide all of those things that include mapping. Zetron then subcontracts with GeoConnex. GeoConnex is actually the vendor that is responsible for providing the mapping back to us as a shared services customer. Okay? We referenced the GIS grant at the last meeting. Maximum, this is current year, they have changed the accuracy that is required to qualify for the money, but the amount has not, the annual amount has not changed. So it's $12,000 per year per PSAP. So for this board, it's $24,000 a year. It is now at $3,000 a quarter. They've changed it from twice a year to quarterly. These are all the GIS products that they are required to maintain for us, and they have to do it at a 98% or above level in order for us to qualify for that funding. And so through our contract, Geocom does all of that, and they submit it to the state, and then we simply receive a check. If you go back, the criteria has gone from 95% to 98% this year. So each year they've ratcheted this up, and the accuracy, they're really pinpointing the accuracy. We have never not qualified for the full allocation. Okay. So this is just kind of a flow chart of the grant. The state of Iowa prescribes the standards to the service boards. That would be Marion County. We contract with Geocom, as I just talked about, to perform that service for us. So Geocom maintains our data. Geocom submits it to the state of Iowa. As long as we're greater than or equal to 98% accuracy, the state of Iowa pays this board. Any questions on this process or how this flow works? I'm throwing a lot at you here, hoping it makes sense. All right, next one. How we assign new addresses per Chapter 24 of the Marion County Ordinances. Chapter 24 is the Uniform Rural Address System. You can pretty much see that Missy and I work together to assign new addresses. Once we've agreed on a new address, Missy is the typical sender, sends an email to Geocom and blankets quite a few of us. I believe both PSAPs are on there. I know Emily and I are on there. A lot of the local people here that need to know this kind of stuff to update things like Beacon, the local databases get notified of those new addresses. Per our contract with Geocom, Geocom updates the Marion County GIS data and then uploads it to the state through a portal. GeoConnex then accesses the Marion County data and provides it to the Iowa Shared Services participants. Am I making sense? You seeing how it's coming together? Okay. So as we started trying to figure out what this was all about, had numerous discussions with Blake DeRushi. He's the state 911 program manager. This is copied email directly from Blake that basically says this is a systemic issue at the state level that affected or affects all shared services customers. It was through no fault of anybody here locally. With that concludes my report. I'll yield to any questions.
So when we had this discussion last time, we were talking about I think, issues related to this and data not being
Not being shown on a
shown
map.
on the map.
Mhm.
So what, I'm kind of jumping to the end here, at least from my perspective, what you're saying is the state is saying, we've had issues, we didn't realize we had issues, and I'm trying to read the email
Yep.
real fast, and they are working to correct those
Yep.
issues.
Because we essentially made notice that we had concerns, we had outdated mapping. They manually, over a period of 2 weeks, went in and did manual updates to both of our PSAPs. And I believe they're both updated. And I believe that they've actually now created what they were supposed to create 2 years ago, where it's automatically done. So,
Thursday of each week, we're supposed to get an update now.
so it should not require us
Okay,
to
good.
raise our hand essentially and say, we've got an outdated map. It should be done automatically.
Good. So when he said, does this guy, Blake, is he like the guy who heads all this up?
Correct.
So kind of his job is to ensure that that portion of the system gets
Correct.
updated? Okay, all right. And you're saying you've got notice that
Yes.
you are going to get your,
It pops up on our mapping screen, and you can either accept it right then and it will update, or you can do it. We restart our maps every single day, so the next time that you restart your map, it would be updated. Like
Okay.
say we had something going on, we had a 911 call, we would just X out of it, but once we restarted it the next morning, it would update at that time.
okay, good,
So,
good. So it sounds, I don't want to speak for the board. Does anybody have any questions for Jeff relative to what we talked about? I want to make sure everybody understands where we're at, and if there's anything lingering, that we address it.
No, I think we got it taken care of in regards to what the issues. I think the IT, between Andrew and they were doing a lot of those updates that weren't happening on that side of it.
Mhm.
But now it looks like everything's working along those lines, so I appreciate them, keeping it up to speed for as long
Yes.
as they did on that side of it. But hopefully now they won't have to do anything, it won't be that part of it.
Jeff?
Just like we're moving forward.
So to Jason's point, it's apparently he was unaware,
Mhm.
right? Is there a flag or something that is in the system now that will tell us, hey, the state's dropped the ball? I don't want to blame him for it, because he's easily fallen on his sword. Is there something that flags the system so that you know?
or if
So when
if
if it
an
happens
address
again?
doesn't get to them, there's no way we would know.
I think it's the, I
Other
think
than
it's the,
typing
I
the
think it's
address in
the,
and searching for it.
I think it's periodic checks.
Right.
Like what IT was doing. Now, that's not their role, hopefully that's there, but I think there needs to be periodic checks done to reassure that they are being, that
So-
it is following through, that the state is doing it. So I think that's the solution.
So when there's an update, we get an email, we get some kind of note, or it just
You get a-
happens?
They get a
It happens
pop-up
on our
notification
console.
on the screen, on the dispatch map.
Because that would be the way you do it, right? You get an
Yeah.
email saying update 1.01 is coming, you get the email, and you know to say, did that update occur?
And it's when those new addresses get entered
Right.
that you routinely, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road, look at all those addresses and say, hey, did this update in that
So-
system? And I think that's what they were doing, but that was the big
So maybe we
discussion.
could check
It's like,
it.
whose job was it to do that?
If Missy
That's the problem.
has a list of those addresses, maybe there's a way to have some kind of gut check.
Yeah, they're sent to, every time there's a new address, it's sent to
So when
those
you get
people
the
on that
list of addresses, is there a time period that address is sent, runs through this whole process, and gets to her?
Are they updating, what they decided, are they updating every week?
Yeah.
So the furthest we should be out is 7 days.
So there should be a way to check, then you get a list of addresses, you call her within 7 days, did you get your update?
Yep,
Right?
yep.
Good. Any other questions on this?
Yeah. Is there any way that doesn't have to be weekly, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, that each department is notified of new addresses in their jurisdiction? I mean, our maps, some of our maps are 2-3 years old.
Mhm.
You know, when dispatch says, "Hey, you need to go to 782 Harrison," well,
I don't
on
think
our-
there's a secret.
on our maps,
It's
it
not
doesn't
like
even
there's
show
a
up.
secret on the addresses. Why isn't the email list just expanded? to
That's what I'm
the fire
asking, you know,
department
like-
or whoever?
I said, I don't
then
think-
you would know that.
We can either have
every time
Missy-
there's a new address.
We can either have-
You just add more emails to the notification that goes from
Yeah.
Missy to Jeff and everybody else, and then everybody knows that, hey, there's a new address here. At least every fire department or
something, you know. Like I said, I don't
Since
think
we're responsible
I don't
to
need it
this
every
board,
week, but
it probably makes sense
maybe
for
every
Emily and I
quarter.
to take
So,
that,
hey,
and
you have
whenever
a
we
new address
receive
in
those,
this territory.
we create our own list, maintain our own list of this group that wants that information, and we push it to them.
I think that, yeah.
I don't think it's fair that we saddle Missy with something that's not necessarily
I
her
agree.
responsibility.
I agree. Okay, we'll just do that by email then.
And like I said, even a quarter, every
Yeah,
quarter,
I think that's a good idea.
I don't think there's a whole lot of houses going to the county, but there's still quite a few. So
Yeah.
I think
Does that update cover, is that just in county or is that 901 districts?
Mike, are you getting?
So like for us, so like to go out of the county,
It's in county, so the process starts with an applicant filling out a building permit.
Sure.
That's what drives this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is they go to zoning, they fill out a building permit. Part of that process is assigning an address.
Okay.
So it would be in
so
county
they kick us out
only.
of county, like if we go to our territory, Warren County, that's purely just,
Yep.
I mean, because sometimes that doesn't go through like point to point, or from one dispatch to the other.
We can have I can have a conversation with Doug to find out what their process is, and can we be clued in like
Sure.
what we're doing here.
Some of that just goes back, he said, like the maps that we got are, when we've tried to do that before, bring them back and forth and get those, and we've done it, but I think that last one was like in 2011, that we have.
We're going to be working on how to best provide you with updated maps. Chapter 24 says annually. We're going to research how to do that better. So,
Okay, very good. Good discussion. Any other discussion items on this, or discussion on this? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for the report on that, Jeff. Emily, I appreciate that. I'd entertain a motion to close discussion on this item then.
so moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll close discussion. So Jeff said we have a GeoCom contract renewal.
we do. Apologies for not being able to send this out to you with the agenda items, but I was pressing them. The lady that formerly took care of contract renewals always sent me an email on April 6th. She retired last year, so we've got a newbie, and I had to actually make contact with them and beg, plead, and beg some more to get this. Just got it. But here's the breakdown. You can see on the left the current products under the contract, and on the and the pricing, and then on the right goes up $600 and change. I'll yield to any questions, but from a staff point of view, I would recommend to the board renewing the contract.
Okay. Board discussion.
Missy has one of those licenses. Who has the other license?
It's actually on Emily's computer, so we have a fallback if Missy's out or absolutely unavailable to do it, and we gotta, because
Yep.
Chapter 24 says we have 7 days to issue an address. So we built, that was a those are $10,000.
Yeah, no,
Tools?
makes sense. Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that we had ability to not violate our own code of ordinances.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion on Jeff's recommendation.
Make a motion to approve the contract renewal with GeoCom.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Is there support?
Second.
We have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. Contract is approved. Very good. Item number 6, fund balance discussion, and then action on projects. So in the last meeting, if you all recall, we had a discussion on our current fund balance and how we would go about deciding how to distribute dollars out of that fund balance, what projects might be a priority that we wanted to use those dollars for. A couple things I want to just kick the discussion off with more from an order standpoint. You see the listing on there. I know there are some projects that came in after our deadline to post our agenda. So those are going to be within the PowerPoint, but they're not in the agenda per se. But I wanted to make you aware of their that they're out there. Several things as we go through this. You don't have to approve everything tonight. So there's no need to say, well, I've got to spend all the money tonight. We've been sitting on this money for a long time. I think you should fully consider all projects. Those that didn't make it, they can be on the next agenda, and those can be a discussion item for the next agenda, and we can have multiple meetings to be able to discuss distribution of funds, if any. Second point, one of the key issues that we have been discussing for years is radios. So in my mind, that's front and center as far as projects or distribution of funds is radios. Because that, we've wrestled with that, Jason, what, for years?
10 years,
Years.
12.
So before we consider any projects that are outside of that, I think I'm just advising you as a board, you can do whatever we can have a discussion on anything you want, but we've got to solve for that, one way or the other. So I think that's all I have for preliminaries.
One thing just to consider, and I know, I mean, you talk about approval, not approval, different things, but I'm assuming that different agencies probably have bids on, and when those expire or whatever, or how long they're valid for or whatever, probably needs to be talked about or whatever on whoever's talking on it. It's like, okay, is this good for the next 6 months, or do I need to really do something the next 2 weeks or whatever on that side, just so people are aware of that.
Fair point, Jason. And I think it's important as we go through this. The way I would envision this is that each of the applications, whoever sent this in, is going to talk about why they sent it in, what the need is, why they're requesting it. We're not going to then say, yeah, let's vote to approve or disapprove. We're going to go through all of them first. That's why I think you need to take notes. I think you need to understand what's being asked for and the dollar. These are significant dollars. So let's get through all of them. And if there are others that didn't make it and we need to carry this over to another meeting, we include those too, to be fair. And then we can have those discussions as we go. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. So if there are any other preliminary discussion from board members. Yes, sir.
I guess I'm just a little confused. It was an impression based on our last meeting, which was over 2 months ago, that we were all to bring some asks here tonight in the interest of efficiency and time. We can all agree that this has been kicked down the road. You just said it yourself. So I just don't understand, I guess, the reasoning behind not having a project here tonight. I am, just saying how it is. I'm not saying that this should be the be-all, end-all. I don't expect a vote tonight. I didn't. But what I'm concerned about is how far do we kick this can down the road more? Is it the next meeting? Is it 2 more meetings? I guess I just don't understand why 2 months wasn't enough time for you to submit a proposal. With prices, with quotes.
Well, let's ask those people that
And I'm
didn't
not trying
get
to put
them
anybody
in.
on the spot, but what I'm concerned about is if we're deciding things based on wherever we decide to, and then we have a couple that say, oh, I didn't, get my chance. When is that, the next meeting then? And so now do we have to rehash all of the ones that we now maybe forgot about? You said take notes. So I guess I'm just a little confused because I thought the board was very clear at our last meeting that if you had a project that you were going to present at our next meeting. So that confuses me.
We can we can say that if you want to vote tonight on a particular project, Chief, those motions can be made. Here's what you risk. Here's what you risk. We didn't have a process like this in place before. I thought your suggestion was very good. That's the process we've implemented. If someone didn't make the cutoff, for whatever reason, we've now honed a process to take care of a $1.3 million fund balance down to a couple of meetings. That's actually pretty good. And that's a whole heck of a lot better than we've done in the 10 years I've been on this board. Because now we're finally getting to the point of decision. So if we can't have that bleed over into a couple of meetings.
Chief, to your point, I understand what you're saying too, and I think the priority side of it, I agree with on that aspect. If somebody has something submitted for tonight, that should take priority, but I also don't want to alleviate somebody because they weren't here. I mean, I'll tell you just one I do know of. Columbia, John Pierce has been down in the back or at different things. They're not here tonight as the Washington Township. I don't know what their total numbers would be. My guess is probably like 5 mobiles and 5 portables or something. But I would hate to exclude them down the road on something if there's money still available or however it is. I don't know what the numbers are going to come in as, and I do agree that maybe it is a priority if somebody's here and willing to present tonight on it, but I don't think we should just shut them out either.
I don't want anybody to ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying we need to have a hard, fast vote tonight. That's not what I'm saying at all. I am saying that I thought that we as a board decided on what the rules were last time. Apparently, we did not. And so I would suggest that tonight we figure out what that is, what it looks like, make it very clear, figure out what that deadline is, and then move forward.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Because again, I feel 2 months was ample time
Sure.
to bring a project to the board. And I think
How
the
do
board
other,
will hold you to the task.
how do other board members feel?
I think if there's just, I've already spoke, but I think if there's agencies that are ready to move forward and they have a bid that needs to be met, and they say, yeah, I'd like you to take a vote on my project proposal, I don't have a problem taking a vote on it. Because if they have deadlines or things that they want to do or move forward, there's the risk you have is what's the total request? Right, if it's 1.3 million, if the total request is only 800,000, let's say, then it's not that big of a risk. If the total request is 1.5 million and we only have 1.3, then that's a different story on that side on how it is. But if there's, I think what would be fair is go through, see what those totals are on different things,
Yeah.
see where that is on those amounts, and if it's something where if Lake Prairie Township says, I have this and I really would like a vote on this because we need radios, we want radios in our hands, and this is something that we talked about for years, and this is what the proposal is, and this is what our bid is, and that bid expires in a month from now or 3 weeks from now, we might not meet again before that, then to kick it down the road again probably doesn't make sense. I think it probably does need to be voted on, and so that's just my 2 cents on it.
Well, I'd like to give some, to your point, Jason, and Chief, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to give some latitude to folks who are, this is a different way of looking at how to distribute these dollars. And if there is somebody who missed it, if there is somebody who thought of it at the 11th hour and didn't get it in, but it's still a relevant project, if we take 2 meetings to cover all these, also thinking about, do you want a reserve? And we're going to have to talk about that. We're not even going to make a financial decision in my mind until the next meeting anyway, because I'm not going to stay here 8 hours talking about this stuff. So I think we've got some time, even though, yeah, we probably did say at our last meeting, and I have to go back and look at everything, we probably said we really want you to have everything in by X date. But if there's something that we missed, Columbia or somebody else, and we add that to the list for the next meeting and then draw it to a close, that's pretty expeditious for how this has operated in the
Did an
past.
email go to everybody, all the voting members about it
Yeah.
on each one of those people?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they did.
And I think another thing that could come out of this tonight when we go through those, anybody that has stuff in, maybe we have multiple vendors, maybe we have 1 or 2 vendors. We might be able to get buying power by combining some of these projects
Absolutely.
into one, but we won't know that till we see
Yep.
who everybody's using either.
Yep, fair point. No, I appreciate all the discussion, that's good. I think let's launch into, we got a list of things to cover. Let's get it started. Jeff, our fund balance currently is?
1.3 million. And I'm looking right now in the current budget that you approved last year's approval. The budget shows 900,000 being set aside for these projects. So I would offer that as a starting point, so you can do some math. 1.3 million minus 900,000, you're going to leave,
400,000.
400,000 and some change
As a reserve.
as a reserve. Maybe should have a conversation or agree that 900 or that's enough based on how much prices have gone up on things since that budget was approved, but that's what the budget says.
So I think part of it is to keep that in our minds as we go through each one of these and run the tally. And then as we start to think about voting on these different requests, what is that appropriate fund balance or that appropriate reserve to maintain? And we go forward from there, okay? First item, we got a request from Knoxville Fire, Chief Wyman.
Yeah, so we have requested for 15 dual band Motorola radios with the two-tone decoding. This will replace all of our duty radios plus the officer radios. The other radios that we have will be put into the apparatus for any off-duty member that is responding. This bid also includes 6 pagers, as that's what we're going to start, all of our off-duty people are going to start carrying instead of buying a radio for every single person.
Very good. Any questions for the chief on that? So you all probably know more about this than most. All right, Pleasantville Police Department. Chief Merstick.
I'm fairly good. We budgeted years ago for our radios. We've got 2 mobiles, 2 portables, and an E911 radio in use. I think the only thing I got a little confused on, and that's me, it wasn't the application, it was a matter of, it's just, how do I budget 3 years down the road? I've got 1 radio in my capital improvements in the next 3 years to buy. I did not include this in this presentation because I didn't know, in fairness to where everybody else was, and I just didn't want to get greedy. So really all I'd like to do is have something built in there as far as radio maintenance. That's my only request at this point.
Okay. And when you say radio maintenance, Joe, you're talking across all these new radios that are being requested, or anybody, whatever they maintain for their radios for their department?
Yeah, so like right now we have Harris radios, dual band radios, which a majority, I would assume they're going to be going a dual band radio. It's a matter of fact, just updates, frequency changes, stuff like that. Those will nickel and dime us to death. So if we can get some sort of a maintenance agreement with Raycom or whoever does that, that would help our budgetary.
Was something for the entire E911 group?
Yeah, so you're asking for PVO PD maintenance or for countywide?
I would say you look at countywide. If
Okay.
we're spending $900,000 on radio, I think it's very, very foolish if we don't have some sort of maintenance program with
I
a
think to
$4,000 radio.
I think to Joe's point on it, if there's new requests, that should be part of that purchase part of it. Because if, let's say you buy a new radio, it should be a 2-3 year type maintenance
It's like a
agreement.
warranty,
Yeah,
right.
that goes along with
Right.
it. But to Joe's point, if there's older ones, you need to consider what's going to be spent, on the upkeep of that, I think is what you're saying,
Yeah,
right?
both, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
going to be both ends of it on whatever the proposal is on,
Any,
or their,
Our proposal includes a 3-year
yeah.
service plan.
But-
It does,
but-
it's
but-
3 years.
Yeah, but old ones, we'd have to
The old ones, we
figure out.
don't
what
have
to do.
anything on it. They're
So,
all pretty much out of there.
any idea what, can we quantify that to any degree?
It varies on numbers,
Okay.
quantities, vendors.
That may be better, yeah.
There's a lot of different things that come into play on.
Okay, so probably what we want to do then is just jot down, we've got service contract for new radios, and that would be included in your price, like Cal did.
Ours is included.
And then you've got service contract old radios or existing radios, and we'll have to wait till we get a final
A
number
number.
to come up what that estimated cost might be.
Yeah, and mine, it'd be very minimal. We don't even update ours maybe once or twice a year, so.
Okay. Got it. Thank you, Joe. Next. Melcher Dallas Fire Department.
Yeah, Zach's not here, but we put in for, we got our pricing from Raycom, and we looked at these Talkit radios, and we had them price this out 15 portables and 3 mobiles for our unit, and it would help us considerably, we feel, in the upgrade.
Okay. A quick question for me, being the non-expert in the room. when we're talking about these new radios, we're talking about them in the context of kind of everybody syncing up to the same kind of radio or not?
Well, I think it's, I don't know, what time, did you bid the XL200s, or do you know what you bid, or are they 7800 or are they
Yeah,
VHF?
well, they're a dual band.
Okay,
top
if they're, as long as it's a dual band, he's good to go with whatever.
Okay, that's what I want to
whatever he
make
wants
sure
to
of,
go.
everything we talked about for
Yeah.
all these years that we're.
We just don't want somebody putting in a request for VHF only radios.
Got it.
Right.
I mean, that's
Okay.
the problem, you don't want.
Got
If
it.
Yeah, if it's that, then it matches.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next. Are we keeping a running total here, Emily?
No.
We almost
I
need,
will.
you almost need like on
Okay.
those muscular dystrophy shows, you know, we just keep running
The
for a
thermometer that's going
The
up.
thermo- yeah.
Some have a range, so if it has a range, do you want us to count
Take the
from the
high number.
highest?
High number.
Just pick the high number. I think Jason's right.
I'll plug them into a spreadsheet.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, Chief Fuller.
I didn't realize we could have ranges.
You take the high on
I'd
that
like
one?
to, yeah, I'd
All
like
right.
to redo mine. So this is for 7 portables and 3 mobiles for us that we could use to replace some of our older portables and put in new patrol cars.
Very good.
I see those copies that which made for you ahead of time. Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. Knoxville Township.
So ours is, we got our bid from Raycom. We decided to go with the Tate, the multi-band. That was for 16 radios, handheld for everybody. It comes with a 2-year maintenance program on it. The main thing is we all just need to get on the same channel. It's hard for dispatch, it's hard for the sheriff's office, it's hard for everybody.
Okay.
We mutual aid with so many people because, we all lack some personnel at times, and we just all need to get on the same channel.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
16.
16.
Next.
Yes.
Pleasantville Emergency.
Is that, okay. So right now what we have is, as part of this quote is 18 APX 900 radios. That's actually just a single band 7800. Those are for line firefighters. We don't have them as using them outside, just mainly in the county to keep that cost down. And then we already have 3 that can hook onto this system, but we put in 4 more that would be dual band for if we were to leave on mutual aid or to be able to either Warren County or Polk County to sync up with them. And then the quote is for 6 mobile, as also mobile radios. And that quote is actually high. The talk to me is $98,894.
Oh, so that number is actually 98?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it?
98,894.
And I assume the difference in the single versus...
So it wouldn't have the VHF what we're migrating from, and so we just tried it for the individuals just gonna ride a fire truck as a firefighter or whatever. I mean, that we already have the 3 that are there for our day crews. So if we have one more crew, they can switch back to VHF. But right now with our mutual aid with Warren County or Polk County, like when we leave is when we hit kind of some of that as well. But everybody's migrated up mostly in the county, like the Corps, Marion County Rangers. I mean, everybody's on the new system. So, I mean, as we migrate out, it was cheaper to try and just stay with the one single band on some of those. So for a lot of those individuals that aren't going to need it, we would have at least the dual bands available if we
You'd
get
have
crossed
that
over.
bit. Okay.
But
Very good. Very good. Thank you. And that fits the program that we were thinking about. Okay. Next, Pella.
First I just kind of like to plead to the board, we need to look at this, in my opinion, from a priority standpoint. When I got here, the same conversation was happening in radios. So I think that should be the top priority of the board. More particularly the smaller townships that are having this struggle and, the funding isn't there. So I think part of our decision making needs to be kind of a small to bigger type conversation. I think we need to get you guys radios. I think that needs to be a top priority. And to your point, Jason, I think there needs to be the others that aren't here tonight in that conversation. The only point I was trying to make is at some point, we need to say, here's your cutoff.
Yeah. No,
Because
absolutely.
we can't make an active decision regarding everybody if we have those satellites.
Yep, agree.
So I didn't come in here fired up about it, but at some point, what I would expect tonight is let's all come together and figure out what that is. I don't mind that it's 2 or 3 meetings. That doesn't bother me. It's just that unknown. And then what happens when they get left out? We've spent all this money, and perhaps the agencies or the townships that needed it most, for whatever reason, didn't get it because we didn't set clear expectations. And I don't want to leave those guys out. It's not fair.
Yeah, I think everybody's on the same
So,
page.
you know, when I looked at this funding, and I agree, I think $900,000 is an equitable figure. If you talk to bean counters smarter than you, they'll talk about 25% reserves and it's scalable and all this. And that's kind of about where we're at when we look at the scale of emergency management, what needs to be funded, and so forth. But I think that's the top priority for this board, is to buy radios for these folks who need radios. Now, that being said, I think there's a little history that we talked about with Pella, and I'm not going to draw this out, but I think it's important to kind of understand where our project started, what we've done, and where we're at, to kind of give the board some information. One of the top things that I was tasked with when I took over as police chief was to begin and come to some conclusion, a radio system. I'm not going to go into the details, but our radio system is outdated and many of it is obsolete. So we already had in our CIP a place mark for a consultant, somebody smarter than all of us, to come in here and give us some ideas on what we need. And so last year, this year, I guess we're still in this year, that earmark finally came. It was about $30,000. And we didn't hand select a consultant. We put out, here's what we want. You come and tell us if you want to consult for us. And then we convened the board and we went through a bunch of measures and some board meetings. And through that process, we selected a consultant to help us. And we asked them one of 4 or 5 things. What do we do? Do we band-aid the operation that we have? If we don't do that, what new system should we do and how much? Those were basically the 3. So the consultant very quickly, and I say within about a month's time, said, well, you're not operating on a system that is going to work. There's redundancy issues, there's interoperability issues, there's cost issues, not to mention coverage issues. The options that were given to us was you can either form your own network within the county at the tune of about $8.5 million, or you can choose to use an existing network system. We're talking about ISIX or SARA. Obviously, the $8.5 million was not an option for us. It's just not a possibility. And so that led us to the conversation of where we probably knew we were going to go. Are we ISIX? Are we SARA? And what we were able to do is to find a location that's already had infrastructure in place. We wanted to avoid finding a green site, building a tower. That's about probably nowadays $1.6 million just to build a daggone tower, not even to put anything on it. So we looked around the city and we said, well, there's something high, like dumb cop stuff, right? Well, there's something high, can't we use that? The consultant looked at it and said, yes, that could be a possible site. And what they did is the consultant asked both Raycom and Motorola to bring us a presentation with an RFP with an estimate. Fancy way of saying a quote, I guess, based on these parameters. And they did that. And they came in and they did their presentation. So it's been a really, really long process. The consultant, based on those presentations and all the information we gathered, not just a year, I would suggest probably the last 5 years at least, and the consultant finally gave a recommendation. Where Pella is at right now is we have not made a decision on whether we're going to be a SARA site or an ISIC site. What we have decided is this is going to cost some money. And so we do have some ranges based on infrastructure. So we have a couple choices. The reason why we wanted to look at an existing infrastructure is to save the taxpayers of Marion County money. Also to give an equitable bidding situation to both networks. If you're not familiar, Raycom has a tower in Pella. So we just said, nope, we just want that one. It kind of excludes your other vendor. They can't put equipment on their competitor's tower. So we kind of gave them a head-to-head opportunity. We were looking at many things. We were looking at price. We were looking at coverage. Coverage is key. We were looking at interoperability. We were looking at customer service. And we were looking at redundancy backups. We were looking at a ton of things. So we're here tonight because that $590 is the lowest cost for the Pella Police Department and that 10-mile radius that we serve, ambulance and fire, taxpayers in Marion County. And I think the top range of that is about 1.6 million. So it's a pretty big range. It's based on, do we do it with this tower, do we do it with this tower, lots of variables. So I just kind of want to give the board a little bit of background on where we're at and kind of how we came up with this number. If you ask me what that number is for, I'd be happy to read off a bunch of nerdy gobbledygook that I don't really understand. But at the end of the day, it's systems cost and consoles and maintenance and training and other stuff. But the $590, just to give you an idea, was that low end quote, I guess, or option is a better thing. What I would suggest, and again, I'm done, but what I, again, just really, really want to suggest is let's take care of our radios. Let's take care of our people who need that. And by gosh, if there's a little bit left over, we'd like to have that as a consideration, because at the end of the day, we're all Marion County taxpayers. It is completely eligible for this funding. And I think that brings this entire county back to 700-800, just like we talked about. We have to have that current system. And there's a lot of service value there that's not a discussion tonight, perhaps another time. We haven't made a decision, but either one, we're going to need at least this amount. And I'll be quite candid and tell you, I did not expect to get a full amount. I'm just giving you what our base, lower of the two options.
Right. So, Chief, again, being the non-expert in the room, is the 590, can that be broken apart into radio and PSAP? In other words, can you tell us
None of that will be radios. It will all be either, the bulk of that on either system side is going to be console and or civil costs. So if we have to build something, that becomes very expensive for engineering design, contingencies, and another consulting fee. And so a lot of information up in the air. We're trying to make a very due diligence approach. This is why we hired an expert consultant.
Right.
So that's just kind of where we're at with our process. The other thing, last but not least, the other thing we talked about, and I am not in a hurry, and again, I will tell you, I did not expect a vote tonight. But having this can be kicked down the road, I think we all understand the frustration, what that feels like, especially those of us who still don't have radios. So again, I would just urge, for us to move forward. This project has it doesn't have an expiration per se, but, if we can get our project moving sooner, that's obviously a very good thing.
Yeah, good. Any questions for the chief on that? And that sounds like all systems work, not radios. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. All right, Pella Fire.
Okay, Pella Fire has 10 apparatus in the station. That's between city and township. So the city trucks, there's 4 of those. They've already been updated to the Harris dual bands. 2 of the townships as well, leaving 4 of our township rigs needing mobile updates. So they're still currently using the old single band VHF. In addition to that, we're asking for 10 portables. About a third of our department's already carrying the Harris XL200s, and officers and a few others. We've got an ask in the CIP from city for some portables as well. But here we're asking for 10 more, so our whole department that way can be outfitted with the Harris XL200 dual band portables. So the pricing there includes all. It does not include any maintenance. I have pricing for that, but I did not include it. It includes installation for the mobiles, but I did not include the maintenance contracts. I thought I would have Lake Prairie decide if they wanted to go that route or not. It's their money. But if you wanted me to include it, I certainly can.
Well, what would that be? What would?
On the portables, it's like $120 per year per radio, and on the mobiles, it's $60.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody left? Bussy. Oh, no, these are the ones that were received after. So, just so you know, we're not going to talk about these because they were received after the cutoff, but we just wanted to make you aware that they're out there. So Bussy sent one in, Indiana Township sent one in, and then the sheriff sent one in. So those are.
The sheriff sent
We
two.
actually sent 2 in.
I'm sorry.
We split them.
You split them.
Can you go back, please?
Y'all just tell me when.
Yeah, if you want to write down those totals and such, that'd be fine. Otherwise, we will mail these out to you.
We good?
1.5.
Is the total for everything, including the 3 or the late ones, or just what we had?
Including the late ones.
So Jeff just told me the total request so far, if you include even the late ones, is 1.5 million. So we have some discussing to do.
Just a quick
Yeah.
comment on looking at just on ours. I mean, obviously ours is a radio thing, and also there's some unknowns in regards to that application on that PSAP updates.
Right.
Because like the chief said, I'm not quite exactly sure what that would all entail. On if Pella goes one direction on what we need to do for our PSAP to update that along those lines, that's a very vague.
So it's some
number.
variability.
There's a lot that can change in that depending on what happens on that end of it for us. in my opinion.
So what may be of value, and this is one of the reasons, Jason, I'm thinking that this carries over into the next meeting, is because Pella's request is a systems request. That's how I'm understanding it, Chief.
Yep.
And if I'm not getting it right, tell me. And there will be definite, there are certain historic implications to that for how the board has done things in the past, and this is way in the past, from when we've done something on the Pella PSAP and what we did with them with the sheriff's PSAP. So at a minimum, we probably have one more meeting to talk about what that looks like if the board approves anything related to the request you made. So I think that's one of those items that we'll have to probably flesh out in that next discussion.
Greg, did you have anything on
I
your
did not.
You good on your end? Or?
We are, because half of my staff lives out of town, so all of my staff in town has radios.
All right.
Okay. So we'll put that in our minds as we continue to discuss this going forward.
Jeff, just a quick, sorry, go ahead.
No. So for the items that have been presented, do you have any questions, anything you want to discuss as a board? It's open to any motions that anybody wants to make. Reserve numbers, all of those things are on the table. We did this in the mental health, so I want to give you an idea what we did with mental health. When the state changed how mental health was funded, and we ended up with about $1.3 million that we had to distribute between 7 counties. We had a big board meeting, the different counties presented what they needed, and then the board went through and decided which ones would get funding through motions and an up or down vote. And we ended up distributing all that money because we didn't want to give it back to the state of Iowa. So we had things approved like telehealth down in Ringgold County, and that's how we helped fund the expansion of Knoxville Hospital in the emergency room. So anyway, to give you an idea of my thought process here, it's if you have questions on any of the presentations, they're all very similar when you're talking radios. So that doesn't sound like a controversial issue because we've talked about that for so long. There's room for motions, there's room for discussion on the items that were on the agenda for today.
What was the total of just the radio stuff? On, if you looked at just the radio on
I
your.
didn't break it out that way. I just grabbed the.
Can there, well, it'd be.
Well, can we spin that back, Emily, and do some quick math on that?
Do you want me to start at the beginning?
So what would we be taking out? The
It would be
590?
Yeah, 1.5 minus 590 and 61,673.
I think it's a 61, right?
Ours
Ours is
came in
60.
like, if you're not gonna include Indiana's or whatever, or buses, I mean, but because they're not on the agenda
Right.
either.
Right.
Oh, I thought he included those in the 1.5.
They're in
You
the
did.
1.5.
Okay, all right.
But of the.
But I mean, you're saying for procedurally, we can't approve buses
Right.
or Indiana's, is that what we're saying?
Right, because they did not make the agenda.
Do we
Okay.
know of anybody who, like you mentioned?
Columbia or Washington.
I mean,
I'm guessing it's gonna be whatever these guys' bids are, or whatever your bid for radios for a mobile and if you did 5 mobiles and 5 portables.
I don't have mobiles, I just had portables.
Does anybody bid mobiles? Did you guys bid any mobiles? How much were the mobiles approximately?
The Harris's, we bid 8,600.
Okay, so 8,600
What's
bucks
that?
times
Radios?
5.
That's just
And
radios.
then whatever.
So the radios, so the radio requests, and this is just for the ones on our agenda?
No, that
Or
was.
this is all radio requests?
That was all of them.
So all radio requests total 852.11. 852,011.
That's even including ours late, or theirs
Yes.
late.
Yeah, that's all in.
But you're saying we can't, I mean, I can tell you the radio presentations that were just made tonight, I mean, I think are very reasonable and the expectations are there. I would have thought it would have been higher on it. I mean, I don't have a problem making a motion to accept the ones over here for the radio stuff.
Cal?
Mark, so how many, what if we looked at, how many were in Motorola? I know we were, you guys were, you guys were. Is there a way we could maybe sit down with the 2 vendors, because the other one is Raycom, and say, we're looking at new radios for Marion County, we want the Marion County spec. Or we bring, because I know talking to Jordan and Radar, we have different options on our radios than they do and vice versa. But we might get more buying power and get more radios at a lower cost if we develop a quote-unquote Marion County spec for both vendors, and they're both, and we can buy more radios at a cheaper price because we're using the same radio, same equipment, same options, and we get higher volume discounts. My quote expires on 4/28, but I'm not opposed to having them rebid it again. If we want to sit down and go and look at can Kelly put all of us together in a room and say, all right, what do you want? What do you absolutely need between KPD, Indiana Township, Pleasantville, Sheriff's Office, Knoxville Fire? All right, I'll build that, and then whoever is with Raycom, sit down with Dwayne and say, all right, we're looking at this. What's the best price we can get if we're going to buy, instead of Knoxville Township buying 5, Belcher buying 5, now we're going to buy 10 of the same radio. You will sometimes get a better deal.
I would totally support that.
I would also, other than the fact that I think the prices of certain companies are going up. Now, it may not be a huge difference, I mean, it may not matter on that, but I do know, I've been told that the quotes that were locked in for certain things.
Right, he told me my quote, I talked to him today, he said my quote that I have will probably be more now than it was when I had it.
But how significant is it?
I don't, he didn't say that, he just said it would be more.
That's what the question we have to ask. I mean, because is it a huge or not? Because, well, our savings make up for what the price increase is.
Right.
Well, and you get, so I mean, 2 issues really for me is, and I want to echo what the chief said, is that can we do this in an expeditious enough way to get agreement, to get it approved? And then does your cost savings mitigate any increase in the price of the individual radio? So those 2 things we've got to resolve quickly so we can get that piece, get that done. Is that something that, I don't know, who are the Motorola folks in the room? Is that something you're all in favor of?
I have no
Trying
problem
to
sitting
pursue?
down with them and figuring it out.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm just concerned that some people are gonna get left out.
I was gonna say, who's reaching out to Clay and Columbia?
I mean, if that's all it takes, I'm just saying, we need to talk to those folks. It doesn't do us any good to have a conversation and then have it again. You know, it's,
So is there, I mean, Cal, is that something you'd be willing to take on?
I can separate.
And coordinate that?
And anybody that's interested in Motorola, or if anybody had used Raycom and wants to look at Motorola, I can set up that meeting.
All right, so if you do that for the Motorola folks, or for whatever radio it is that you're getting, that there are other people getting a similar type, then reach out to those other townships, and Jeff, maybe you can help with just making sure we talk to those folks. Then at the next meeting, it would be a consolidated bid, or a consolidated amount that would be less than the individual parts, correct?
That'd be our hope, is that by rebidding this as a
Unit.
as a multi-unit purchase, that we would get it better than what I got 15 for.
Okay.
Well, and you also, I think, you have bidding power, but you also have maybe an option of maybe getting a better warranty than what.
I was just gonna mention, standardized maintenance.
Maintenance or.
Yeah, I think that would be, because you have buying power at that point, so.
So Cal, it would be what that consolidated pricing is, full maintenance included in whatever that cost is.
Well, and also, you know, dumb question or comment is, you know, do we need so many dual band radios? You know, if we're all going to the 7800 system, why do we need so many dual band in the
So
radio?
I thought through that one a lot, because on like our Tates aren't dual band. And the radios I bid are dual band. I kind of was the one pushing to go away from dual band. And I got, the question is going to be on those, the bussies of the world, or the deputies that go to La Villa, down into Monroe County, that are still VHF. Are we going to be able to patch a VHF like we do in Pella to that 7800? And because actually in reality it's probably going to be their patching is going to have to do it in Monroe County, just like Pella does it for us. And if they're willing to do that, then I think you could get rid of the VHF, just like you said. I kept it in my bid for the fact that if they say, no, I'm not going to do that, then we still have to switch to that VHF when that deputy's in La Villa or wherever it may be to talk. But if they're willing to patch it in those areas, and I'm sure, I mean, you're probably in Lucas County, I mean, on your side, Terry, on
We don't go there often,
don't
but.
you? Okay.
But Columbia does.
Columbia.
Columbia
Okay.
goes to Lucas.
Well, and I left the dual band in because when you look at the comms plan for the disaster task force, about half the channels are VHF still. Now, does that still mean everybody needs to have the dual band? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, but that's why I left ours in as dual band, just because of the different stuff that we could need it for.
I think those are discussions you have with that vendor.
Right.
Are there any contracts that people are still, that we have buying power?
NASPRO. Or NASPRO, NASPO. I think it's the NASPO side is
Is what well sourced?
That's the one, the
other
state, yeah,
one?
the state on the new stuff, there's a state contract that I tried to go off of, but the radios I'm looking at aren't on the state contract yet. They won't be on until like 2024, 2025, onto the state contract, but they are on the NASPRO contract with the state is using to buy them. So that's the contract I went off of, but I don't know, like Raycom's on it, they might have something on the state side or something too that would be there.
So Cal, you're going to take that for that consolidated bid, and whoever's a part of that. Are there any of the ones that presented that will not be a part of that consolidated bid or presentation?
I guess, or another question is, whose bids will expire soon?
Well, that
Ours expires 4/28.
or said his expires soon.
Ours
so-
is the 15th.
But who could we approve tonight if we wanted to approve? That's what I'm asking.
I would feel more comfortable as a voting member to bring those consolidated quotes back, and then we could actually vote on a real amount.
Well, I understand that. I'm just saying, who wouldn't be a part of it? Who's not a part of that consolidation?
Oh, well,
These guys?
these guys, and if rural decides to stay with Raycom, then it'd be those two together.
Rural and Pella would be the Raycom one.
Okay, so is there,
What did Melcher bid?
What's that?
They did the
But-
tapes.
Tates, oh.
so is there any, I mean, I understand, bring it all back again and make sure we've got the total amount, but we still have to make it fair to the rest of the board, that we got several townships that you could approve tonight if you wanted to, because they're not gonna be a part of that consolidation. So, I want to put that onto the table. If there's no motion, there's no motion to do that.
Well, I think the chief's point is even on the numbers with them, you would still probably want to go back to them.
I guess that's what I'm asking is, are there enough numbers there to?
What were yours again?
To
Randy?
be enough to,
What were your numbers to get your portable and your mobiles?
10 and 4.
10 portables, 4 mobiles.
10 for tiles,
So we were 16 radios.
I think that's enough.
mobiles, or
But
portables.
see, they did Harris's and
Okay.
these guys. Both these did the tapes.
or Knoxville Township.
Right.
Okay.
I think you
Different
look at it,
products, so
I think
we
to the chief's point, you would probably ask Dwayne and say, hey, we're looking at doing this together.
Okay, so there needs to be more information. They need to get more information?
I would think it's at least worth a phone call.
Okay. So you guys are good with that?
Sure. Price they save gets them an extra year maintenance or something.
Well, here's the other side too, what's the date today? I don't even know. 19th. The earliest bid expiring is mine, isn't it?
No, there's a 28th of this
Ours
month.
is 28th
Of this month? Okay, so that yours is the earliest, it gives us a little bit of time in between there to have a discussion or bidding process to know that, hey, where are we at with this? So, when was
Okay.
yours expired, do you know?
He didn't state it.
Okay.
It's from late March, but he didn't
Okay.
state it.
Dwayne's usually pretty good
Yeah.
about keeping them.
Okay.
Ours doesn't expire. Okay.
So unless I'm hearing anything different, it sounds like everybody's got to come back on the radio side with more detailed information, at least for the consolidated group.
I think one of the things, and maybe if you were asking Cal this, one of the first questions Cal, if he's the one in charge of this, needs to ask Clay and Columbia, is what vendor are they kind of looking at going with?
That's what we,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
well,
sorry, is that what you
I can
said?
email
That's what he's gonna
Nate
do.
and,
Oh, okay.
John and see if they have a preference or they really don't, you know.
You might have to make a phone call.
And are those the only two townships that are out right now?
Yeah.
And Red Rock.
I don't know that John checks his
Red Rock,
email
Clay,
frequently.
or Red Rock, Washington, and Columbia.
Red Rock.
Isn't that Red Rock Township?
Is
It
like,
doesn't,
No.
yeah, they don't.
They don't have,
They're out of the county.
Oh, they don't have a vote?
well, they technically have a seat on this board, but we didn't send the application to any of the departments from where their stations are in another county that serve in this county. So.
Can we do that?
Runnels.
Unless they're a member of the board? or
Runnels,
not? I don't
Prairie
know.
City, and Monroe. Well, it's essentially what Warren County did to Pleasantville, so.
They kicked us out because it said our main dispatch is.
so we've got,
Did Mahaska let you guys be a part of theirs?
she was in the meeting the last meeting, yeah.
Well, I don't know, I guess that's up to the board on, I don't know what the bylaws or what the rules say is if you have to allow them to have a spot or if you don't. If they're a member of the board, do they get a voice, or do they get a vote, obviously? But
well,
do they
where
get
are the taxes collect? Are the taxes for Marion County residents or are they for other counties?
Well, like,
Marion, some of them are in Marion County.
yeah, so like
Yeah, we're not-
Monroe, like the one the Red Rock one is the fire department that covers my house is Monroe's, which is Red Rock, probably. Well, Washington is Columbia, isn't it? So then, I don't know how far, I guess Monroe would be the only one.
So let's,
Monroe, Prairie City, and
Prairie City,
Prairie
Monroe.
City and Runnels.
Runnels, Prairie City, and Monroe.
so let's at
Oh,
least,
it's all three of them?
Yeah.
And we're not depriving them of a vote. They can
They
come to
can come
this,
to the
they can come to this
We're
meeting.
just not allowing them.
We're not taking the dollars that were collected in Marion County and distributing them outside.
To their
right.
I think I
Yeah,
articulated
it's
that.
whatever you guys, decide on.
I know we can chase people down. I mean, if we know people talk about radios, I think we need to consider them, but. at some
Right.
point-
At some point, you got to
Have
say
some
you've been notified, right? Okay, good.
So on that, our money goes to them, taxpayer to cover, right? But where I live.
Yep.
Where I live, my taxes help pay for their fire department.
The township taxes that you,
Yeah,
that
but
you
what you're
pay.
saying, is, just because my taxes go there, they don't have to, or we don't have to allow them to have a vote on whether we give them radios or not. That's what
But
you're
we're-
saying, what they did, you're saying another county did it to
Yeah,
Pleasantville.
but we're not depriving that township of a vote. They have a seat
No, I
legally
know.
here. If they show up, they can vote.
But they just aren't eligible for the application.
I think the actions here are saying that. I don't want to say that.
No, I'm not, I'm not.
Yes, yes, I'll say it.
I think that's what he said, is they'd like, yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right, so
I have
where,
another question.
yes, sir.
Involving those 20 test radios that were purchased. Can those be implemented into any of these requests in
Jeff?
any way if they've not been assigned?
Yeah, Jeff was just talking to me about it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this board needs to tell me what to do with them when everybody has tested them and that directive that this board gave us essentially a year ago, when that's completed, what do you want to do with, what do you want me to do with those 20 radios?
Are they Tate or XL200s?
Tates, sorry.
They're 20 Tates?
They're 20 Tates, correct.
How many did you ask for in Tates? Was it, who asked for the
Well,
Tates?
they asked for the dual band tape.
Oh, who
I
asked
think
for
they
the,
asked for the dual band tape. Yeah.
so they're only single band tapes?
Yeah. Which, it's not gonna hurt anybody,
No.
but I think, well, those 20 radios, I think we do need to keep 10 or 12, 10, so let's say 10, half of them for a cash set of radios for nationals, for the Balloon Fest, for whatever else we may have. Then there's 10 of them. If Melcher's okay with 10 single bands, fine. Nascarilla will be fine with 10 single bands, fine. But I think we do need
Yeah,
to
they
keep
can be utilized, I just was trying to, I was just thinking if somebody requested them
Right,
and already in
yeah.
their bid, you just give them to that agency.
Sure.
Because that's the radio they were looking at.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
I didn't realize they were dual bands.
Okay.
They're gonna say maybe that's what John would be happy with, because they're a very simple, easy radio for him. He's a very simple, easy guy, and you know that might be all he
Are you gonna
needs.
call and tell them, congratulations, you got radios? By the way.
By default, you got the radio.
You know, or you know, that's like I said, they're great radios. I like the tape product. I just can't stand the service we get from the vendor that sells the tape product. It's been horrible for us. That's why we're searching.
Okay. So not to,
How many of those radios were there?
20.
20?
yeah. So it sounds like in our next meeting, we're not gonna get this resolved today. We've gotta get this consolidated bid. Cal, you're gonna shepherd that. The other departments, a little more detail to your quotes, including maintenance costs. A split between new and old. A split between new radios and old radios, because Joe asked about having a built-in maintenance for old radios. So we need to know what we have. I have no idea what that number is. And if there's some money we want to set aside for the old,
Yeah,
as a subsidy for maintenance.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it if nobody else thinks it's necessary, because they're all new radios.
It's up to the
They're
board.
gonna
I mean,
have
do you
contracts.
think that's worthwhile to consider our next meeting?
I honestly would encourage Joe to buy new radios. I mean, if you get the 3-year agreement and the things that go along with it, by the time you start looking at the maintenance side of things, I know it's, I'm just throwing that out there.
I would think that the two main group of Motorola and Raycom, I think we need to encourage them to do a county-wide maintenance. So, hey, you know, Motorola, we're buying.
If you bought a bunch of radios, why couldn't you get them to do the old ones?
Right, or something, you know, talk to them, say, hey, you know, we're going to
We
be
have
spending.
as much money that's being spent, there's buying power.
I would think.
To negotiate maintenance agreements and other stuff.
So maybe we can just include them in that, Joe.
After so many years, these become just paperweights because they're not worth fixing anymore.
Right, that's what I'm just saying. I mean, on his point, a small agency.
Mine's been a wheel chuck from day one.
Okay. So we'll try to figure out how we can get that through the course of buying all these radios. Okay? Anything else on the radio piece that we're going to be talking about and finalizing in our next meeting?
When is the next meeting, you said?
Well, I don't know. When do you want to have the next meeting?
I think there has to be a subgroup meeting before the 30th, or whatever
I
the
think,
date.
I mean, really, for those of us doing a Motorola, I can get with each of you tonight, kind of figure out your schedule. I'm sure if I call Kelly tonight, I'm gonna run home and say, hey, we need to meet with you Tuesday at 4 o'clock, he'll be there.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the guy he is, you know,
Okay.
so.
So do you want to, I mean, you said the 28th was your bid
My bid's up
expiration?
on 28th.
And you're the earliest one?
I believe so.
So what's next week, midweek look like for everybody?
I think it's,
I think that's prior to the 28th, isn't it?
well, that's
Yeah.
your opinion. Just like you driving a Tahoe, me driving a big Ford truck. I mean,
April 28th would be that next
It's all,
Friday.
it's all an opinion.
So how does next Wednesday, today's Wednesday? What is today?
26.
Today's Wednesday.
Next
Yep.
Wednesday is 26th.
Does that work for everybody?
I'm sorry, Mark, what was it?
Does next
Wednesday
Wednesday
night.
work? Same time, same channel?
I'm on shift, so you can be here.
Jordan, does that work?
You'll have to come, I'm on,
Yeah.
working.
I won't be here.
Are we gonna say that that's it?
Yep.
If you don't have your,
That's it.
radio project,
That's it.
that's it, you're out?
Either way, you're gonna have to touch base with them, because if we're all switching, they're gonna have to switch to the new system. You know, so I mean, we have to talk to them, of what's going on anyways. I mean, so we need to figure out where they're at. They may not want any money, but they're gonna know they're gonna have to switch.
Right.
So, I mean,
Is it Bryce now? Is it Bryce, still Bryce?
No,
No.
it's not me.
Nate Crozier is in the chief client.
So yeah, we can reach out to.
You gotta reach out to all those folks and get them nailed down on what they are, where they're at.
Corey said he's gonna tell John to call me tomorrow morning.
Okay.
John.
Okay, so we're gonna get that, Cal's gonna shepherd that piece of it, we're gonna reach out to those other groups. Can we make sure we do that? Emily, can you make sure
Yes.
we have follow-ups, make sure we're doing all that? Okay.
Yep.
Next meeting then on the 26th,
At 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yes, I'll send everything out.
Plan
Meeting
plan
minutes
on
from tonight.
voting up or down on radio requests, certainly that. If we can get the bidding power, Joe, I think it takes care of your
Yeah.
maintenance
like I
idea.
said, I'm not overly concerned about
I don't want to exclude it if it's something we gotta have.
No, it's not, it's not, and I don't want to waste a lot of time on it, so.
Be thinking about your reserve amounts.
Hey, oh, whoa.
Let me finish. Be thinking about your reserve amounts. Because at the current number, we're about 800,000. Because we'll be talking about those additional requests that we didn't really talk about tonight. They'll be added in, and they're already added into the totals that we're talking about. So that's eight, if we save what? I don't know how much we'll save, but what, 700,000 for radios? Plus maintenance?
Here's a really important question.
Okay.
You're going off the assumption that everything's 100% funded by E911, and there's no cost share with agencies based on that dollar amount, or is there a cost share? We really need to talk about that. Is there, I mean, if it's X agency and they say, this is what my request was, E91's picking up all of it, not half and half, or 75-25, or I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what is that, because we've talked about that in the past.
Okay.
So I don't want to come back to the next meeting and all of a sudden say,
Now, the assumption on these, I'm assuming these are all funded, full funded.
okay, I just want.
I don't think anybody presented a cost-sharing agreement, did they?
I think on mine, I checked
There
that
was-
there's a
there was
possibility,
a- there was
there's
a-
an opportunity
There was a
that.
question there about if you had funding right now for this to assist with, but I don't.
I
right-
checked it.
Right now, we couldn't, we'd have to go to council for a special request because there's no money in this year's budget and next year's budget, they were cut.
Right.
So,
So I agree with that. If there is something you can cost share, put it in there, and it reduces the overall request, fine. If you can't, don't let that. We've been dealing with this radio thing for so long. We need to get this done.
Okay.
Now, the question going forward I do not know if you buy these maintenance agreements, if they last for 3 years. Well, then after that, depending on what fund balance this 911 had, you may have to pick up those costs after that. So that's the part that I think everybody has to understand, right? And by then, who knows, we may be talking about new types of radios. But Elon Musk may have a whole new system for us.
He's working on it.
And then part of the discussion next week, or next meeting, well, next week, will be the PSAP discussion, Chief and Jason, what you've got. That's a significant amount of money, so we need to I don't understand the dynamics here, so that's gonna be a more robust conversation, I would think. Okay? Anything I'm missing?
Nothing, but can I ask a question not about radios?
Maybe.
Go ahead.
Depends how long it takes.
4 years ago, we got approved for the automatic storm siren system, but we still have not seen anything of it. And ours is getting worse. It's like steps that you have to take. It takes us forever to set off the storm sirens. Do we have any update on that?
Both, we submitted 2 applications to improve our chances. Both of those were approved. We're waiting on the funding to drop.
That's FEMA?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're approved, but
Was yours updated too? Did
I
we do it all
don't know that.
together?
I can follow up. I can ask them and see if they have any idea when the funding might magically drop.
Okay.
All right.
Won't hurt to ask.
That takes care of your
Yeah,
question?
thank
Very good. Any other question on any items we're gonna cover next week? Okay, if there is nothing else,
Motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? And I assume no opposed. Thank you very much.